Tom here at Sharpening Supplies, and we have a pretty blunt Wusthof Classic Ikon that we're going to sharpen today. 1267 grams. Because it's so blunt, we'll start with a coarse 220 grit waterstone. Okay, we've raised a burr all along the edge on both sides, so we're going to switch over to the medium 1000 grit stone now. It's a good idea to clean your edge when you're switching grits so you don't transfer any of that coarser grit over to the finer stone. So this knife had gotten very blunt, hence starting on the 220 grit. I'd recommend not letting it get that blunt, and then you can go straight to the 1000 grit. 1000 grit will probably be your workhorse stone, doing most of your sharpening on a stone around this grit level. Ideally, you want to be getting a paper slicing edge off of a 1000 grit stone, and then you can move on to finer grit. So now that I've raised a burr on both sides on the 1000 grit stone, I'm going to spend some time doing edge trailing strokes only to try and remove that burr. Edge trailing strokes do typically create a slightly larger burr, but they're a lot easier for beginners to handle because you're less likely to dig into the stone if you're using edge leading strokes. Just using very light pressure on these strokes. Okay, so pretty good. A little bit more work to do on the tip. I can still feel there's some burr left there. You want to get a good finish off your 1000 grit stone before moving on to the higher grits. Once you move up to the fine grits, you're really just polishing the edge that you've already got. You're not removing a lot of material, so you want to make sure that you've given yourself a good foundation before you move on. If slicing through the paper reveals that there's one section that requires a little bit more work, it's perfectly fine to concentrate your sharpening on that little area. Don't feel like you need to work the whole edge just to finish off one small little patch on the edge. All right, so much better now. And that's just with the 1000 grit stone. What you could do is strop and then you'd have an okay edge. What I like to do is then move up to a fine stone, a 3000 grit, and polish this edge up a little bit. So that's what we're going to do now. As I said before, you want to move on to your fine grit once you've already got a pretty sharp edge, because all you're going to be doing is polishing that edge. You're not really going to be removing a lot of material, so if you haven't got a good edge, you could end up spending a lot of time on your fine stones. Using just really light pressure. Okay, polish the edge up a little bit on that 3000 grit. Cutting really clean now, getting some nice smooth cuts from this edge, which shows it's been nicely polished. One last thing that I like to do is just strop it a little bit. That will get rid of any potential burr that's left over and give it an even more refined edge. Okay, and that will just about do it. 127 grams, greatly improved. So with just a 220 grit, 1000 grit and a 3000 grit stone and a little bit of stropping, we've taken this extremely blunt Wusthof chef's knife back to a serviceable condition. If you want to get any of these stones, I'll leave links to them in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider giving it a like and subscribe for more. Oh, almost.